Hello, students. This is Mr. Martirone speaking to you. You guys should have out your packets. This is entitled The World in Crisis. We're going to cover the years 1920 to 1945. It's important to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that a lot is happening in the past 100 years, and I'm just going to provide you with a very, very brief overview. So you want to put the appropriate notes in the following boxes, and in this video, we're going to talk about Europe in transition, democracy versus dictatorship, and then the global conflict of 1939 to 1945. And again, we're not going to go into a whole lot of depth because we'll do that in class, but we will go over just a brief introduction today. So the world from 1920 to the year 2000, before we get to modern day. So the first thing we want to talk about, we're still keeping our focus here in Europe. When we last left off, World War I had changed the political spectrum of Europe, and new countries were carved out of the former empires of Europe. And where we are in the 1920s, well, we know that with a strong economy, America has become a world power. Great Britain is struggling with all sorts of unemployment and labor unrest, and it owes a substantial amount of money to the United States. France recovers more quickly than England because of reparations that Germany owed them. So France is getting back on its feet a little bit more quickly. Russia reforms its government and is now a communist dictatorship under Lenin. And Germany, we'll talk about in a little bit more depth. Germany is suffering from huge deficits and huge depressions because of the amount of money that they owe the rest of the countries that were destroyed in World War I. So here is a little map of the total debts owed by the United States. So Russia owed 187 million to the United States. Czechoslovakia, 62 million. Hungary, 1 million. Romania, 25 million. Austria, 24 million. Italy, 2.9 million. Great Britain, 4.2 million. So there is a lot of money coming into the United States as a result of World War I. So the United States becomes what's called a creditor nation. They're getting money in rather than taking money out. Right now, in modern day, the United States is what's called a debtor nation because we are spending more money than we're taking in. So after World War I, the United States is in a real good position. And it's just a kind of a close-up map of what we just discussed. All right, Germany's inflation, really neat. All right, Germany, guys, we know that inflation is when money loses its value because of overproduction. Well, what happens very simply is the German economy becomes inflated and loses its value. So the Germans come up with the idea of producing more money. Well, as you produce more money, the value of that money decreases and therefore loses its value. So in 1914, you could trade $1 and get 4 US dollars. Not bad if you're an American. By 1919, 5 years later, 1 US dollar is equal to 14 German marks. By 1921, 1 US dollar is worth 76 German marks. Look at August of 1923. 4.6 million marks is equal to 1 US dollar. Compare that with 2 months later. It's 4.2 trillion, equivalent to 1 US dollar. So Germany's inflation rapidly increases. All right. I love these pictures. These are pictures of people with their money. And I think that's an example of the German mark. Here you have a young man who's playing with that, with the money. Here you have a woman who is burning the money to stay warm because it was more effective to just burn the money and use it for warmth or wallpaper or even toilet paper in some cases than it was to use it for currency. So this is going to be a tremendous problem. Here's a great image. I love this image of this guy. He's going to the food store. That's not a, and that's, a couple $1 million right there. That's what it took for, um, for people to afford food and clothes. Their bare necessities, millions of dollars. So Germany's inflation becomes a tremendous problem. So Germany is humiliated after the defeat of World War One, and it suffers a tremendous economic depression and rapid inflation. Japan is very slow to militarize, and they begin to seize parts of the Pacific, like Manchuria, and they continue to industrialize. So we've got a growing threat from Germany and Japan. And Italy, nationalism begins to grow under Mussolini, and he has the goal of restoring the old German, or excuse me, the old Roman Empire. So on the one side, you've got the democracies of France and Great Britain that are struggling. On the other hand, you've got dictatorships of Germany, Japan, and Italy. They're beginning to industrialize and militarize. Those empires are beginning to rebuild. And finally, Spain is a politically divided country, and a civil war breaks out there in 1931, adding to the chaos in Europe. Right. So take a minute, make sure you have those points about Europe in transition, Europe really and the world in transition. Our next video will be about dictatorship versus democracy. If I went too fast, play the video again, but make sure you get this down.